Nice Radio Kalaloo presents Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative and yes, certainly controversial socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio. First aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m. with repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. You can catch us on the World Wide Web at www.niceradio.info, and you can check out our Just Another Look blog, www.justanotherlook.com. I am, of course, Keith Joseph. Today is Saturday. It is the 17th day of March 2018. Welcome to another edition of your favorite program, Just Another Look. We are into the third month of 2018. And it appears as though we've started the year where we left off in respect of crimes. Just Another Look has maintained that when you examine what has happened with the police service in this country since 2001, it is clear that there has been issues with leadership. But then that shouldn't surprise us, because the ruling party has always had issues with its own leadership. And Just Another Look has taken the time over the last several weeks and months to highlight the history of leadership crises within the ruling Unity Labour Party. But the leader continues to bury his head in the sand and pretend as though there is no crisis of leadership within his own party. Why? Because he is the leader. But his own leadership style may well have been responsible for precipitating the very crises that Just Another Look has identified within the Unity Labour Party. So it is easy for us to see the same leadership crises being evident in other institutions for which the ruling party is responsible. And one of those institutions is our national security. And Just Another Look maintains to this day that what we have seen within our security services over the past several years has been one of musical chairs. Musical chairs. And one wonders whether the ruling regime cannot be considered as having a political perception of national security that bodes no good for this country. You see, in some institutions, you could afford to play politics and get away with it. In matters of national security, it is not so easy to do that. And if you put square pegs in round holes in respect of our security services, what you end up with is a stage, an end stage that is much worse than the first. For all of the bravado that we have heard from the Prime Minister of this country, who's Minister of National Security for many years, about how well his government is doing, how well he has been doing, how well his party has been doing, how well he's been operating in respect of all arms of government. The fact of the matter is that in respect of national security, he and his regime can be considered colossal failures. Colossal failures. So that regardless of what has happened over the last few years in terms of the leadership that they have chosen to head our police services, for example, they have not been able to control crime and criminal activities in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is their mandate. So we continue to refer to the number of occasions since 2001 that this government and its leadership in police have overseen the establishment of new national records for the number of murders committed in a single year. How often have we spoken about that? And you saw it again last year. We set a new record last year in terms of the number of murders committed in a single year. There is a dearth of leadership in the police. Not that they don't have competent people. So we know that they're well-trained officers. We know there are committed officers in the police service. But are they the ones who are being selected for top positions? Are there officers who are being overlooked? Is the government of the day playing politics with the police service and our national security system? That is the question that we are forced to ask. So how is it on Thursday of this week we could have a shooting in the heart of Kingston? So criminal elements are not afraid of our police services. We know that the lotto booth, or we have lotto booths in the heart of Kingston, and the one at which the incident occurred during this past week, Thursday of this week, just a couple of days ago. We know it is there. We know its operating hours. So the fact that a gunman, has been able to launch an attack just a few yards away from our police headquarters, friends. just a few yards away from our police headquarters, is reflective of the state of our policing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Because we're quick to say that it is reflective of the state of criminality in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that is truth. Because the criminals are no longer fearful of how close to or how far from the police headquarters they can perpetrate their crimes. So it tells you that our criminals are not fearful of our police. They somehow believe that they can run riot in the country at any point in time because they recognize there is a crisis of leadership within the police. What is the focus? What is the focus of our security system? What is the focus? We seem to have been anxious to spend time after a teacher at Bishop's College because of something she allegedly put on Facebook. That seemed more important. And just after that fracas, coincidentally, our two senior criminal officers, criminal investigators, are posted hither and thither. We seem to have been anxious to talk about two police officers engaging in a cell phone conversation and talking about storming. And we made a whole lot of fuss about it and talk about it, and the police activity, we talk about it everywhere. That nothing came of it because, according to the prosecution, there isn't anything to be made of it. But certain people thought it was something they could feed on. And again, officers were posted hither and thither. But just another look was quick to point out that in spite all of the hurrah and brouhaha about those two police officers and the Police Welfare Association, they were resoundingly returned to office to head that organization. What does it tell you? It tells you that the rank and file of our police have confidence in them. Can we say the same for those who are tempted to suggest that they may have been heading in a direction of treason? So what is the state of our policing? Are we spending more time just talking? You see, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the electorate were convinced in 2000 and 2001 that a Unity Labour Party government was serious about fighting white-collar criminality. That the Vincent Beach promise of waging an incessant war on crime and the causes of crime with special emphasis on white-collar criminality was going to happen. Was going to be realized. Just as they once thought that his seeming commitment to the introduction of integrity legislation was serious. But Vincent Beach come out of politics so long that he probably don't even remember he was promising the nation that within the first 100 days, integrity legislation would have been produced. So we are saying that the Unity Labour Party has spoken loud and clear about waging a war on crime and the causes of crime with special emphasis on white-collar criminality. And for 17 years, 18 years, you keep asking yourself, so where has that gone? Where has that promise gone? Where is the evidence of that commitment gone? So our criminals are now of the understanding that they can strike wherever, whenever, and against whomsoever they feel at any point in time. They are now more daring than ever. And many, many Vincentians are scared because they saw this coming. Just Another Look has repeatedly stated that many Vincentians no longer report robberies because for many it is an everyday occurrence. People's homes are being cleaned out during the day because the criminals know who, how, when, where. People on the street are telling you that the criminals are coming into your house and putting you to sleep so that they could, in fact, do whatever they want. By the time you wake up, your house empty and you're trying to figure out what happened and how lucky you were that they didn't deal with you. They just took your possessions. That is happening right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines on an almost daily basis. But the Vincentian community has come to recognize that reporting robberies to the police has little or no effect. For many, it is a waste of time because they understand the issues of leadership or lack thereof, or leadership crises within the police service. So we could congratulate the Unity Labour Party for bringing the police to where it is today. Bringing our national security services to where it is today. Our Coast Guard had been rendered ineffective because what they have is too little put. How are they expected to protect our waters without the resources? How long ago did George McIntosh went about its business? Decrepit. What is the Coast Guard supposed to work with in order to adequately protect our waters? You see, it's easy for politicians to get up and talk about leadership. It's easy for politicians to thump their chests about how well they perceive themselves to be doing. Because at a certain point in their careers, they stop listening to anybody else. We have long since passed that stage. It is all about I and I and I. So when people thought James Mitchell was the ultimate Rastafari, up comes Ralph Gonsalves. And his presentations are like those of Natty Dread himself, because it is I and I alone and me. there is concern about the state of crime in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The state of the economy remains weak. When the leadership of government have to be convincing you that the economy is not as bad as you think it is, then you know for sure that the economy is bad. When an economy is good, the government doesn't have to tell you. You tell everybody else. The minute they have to be repeating it over and over, it is the Goebbels syndrome. If you tell somebody a lie often enough, they will begin to believe it. But more importantly, you, the teller, will also begin to believe it. So we're telling ourselves that we're doing well. Wonderfully well was the expression. Wonderfully well. We were on the cusp of economic takeoff so many years ago that people no longer know where that cusp is because we haven't taken off. And people are asking, how is it possible that neighboring Grenada, that was ravaged by Hurricane Ivan in 2004, how is it possible that Grenada could have rebuilt itself, reorganized, restructured itself, so that investors are more anxious to go there than they are to come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which according to our leader, according to Papa, is a model of stability. How is it possible? How is it possible? How is it that we are so far behind St. Lucia, another neighbor to the north? We have the ultimate in leadership, you know. Our leadership is the most fantastic. It's the most self-assured. The reason, dear friends, is as we have said time and again, our leadership appears characterized by hubris. It is more about self, or so it appears, than about the well-being of everyone else. But you're listening to Just Another Look. And we need to hold governments accountable for its seeming inability to adequately address the matter of crime and the causes of crime in this country. You know, friends, we want to deal with a section called Politicians Could All Talk. Politicians could all talk. And believe you me, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have turned that into an art form. Politicians and all talk. You see, because when you attempt to analyze our country's performance, you recognize how much old talk we have been fed and continue to be fed. Politicians across the world are considered a very special breed of people. You know, they used to have a program some years ago. It was called People Are Funny. It was hosted by a guy called Art Lingletta. People Are Funny. But Just Another Look wants to declare here and now, politicians are funny. Politicians are very, very funny. You see, over time, politicians, especially those who rise to the leadership of a country, the country in which they live, those politicians tend to arrive at a point where they see themselves as almost infallible. In other words, they see themselves as incapable of doing anything wrong. They see themselves as capable of achieving anything. Because they say so. And they impose themselves on their respective societies. They impose themselves on their respective societies. In this Caribbean of ours, political leaders are aware, most importantly, of the level of functional literacy in the country. And by extension, the level of functional illiteracy. And they use this knowledge to their ultimate political benefit. They use these statistics to establish themselves and exercise full control over the country. While speaking on the one hand about the importance of educational development for the country, on the other hand, they thrive on those who they know are not sufficiently schooled. They are the people to whom they can sell just about anything. And it is the reason why you find the Goebbels philosophy so impactful in our Caribbean countries. And similarly here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Because too often political leaders are of the view that given the level of functional illiteracy in their respective countries, there's a significant proportion of the electorate that will readily accept just about anything that they are told by the political leader. That is how dangerous it is. Regardless of how much we have claimed to have advanced in terms of our educational development, you recognize that the politicians on political platforms and in many radio programs continue to operate on the assumption that the most significant segment of the electorate would be those people who are sufficiently gullible and who are prepared to fight physically to defend their political parties because they are assumed to know no better. It is the reason too, dear friends, why in Caribbean politics the patron clientelism still exists in what should otherwise be an age of enlightenment. So we have this nonsense of politicians having clinics as though they are medical practitioners. Having long lines of people coming to tell them their woes so that they can give them a little $5, a little $10, etc. It is the reason why on the eve of elections, you can throw brown envelopes with a few $100 on the doors because you are convinced that they remember only their last meal. It is the reason why you could tell people with a referendum on the horizon, you're not printing a whole set of those documents because some people may use it to wrap fish. What are you saying about the populace? The perception of the levels of functional illiteracy in our societies allow political leaders to lead too many of our societies by the nose. So you can tell them all sorts of rubbish. There was no way that by any stretch of the imagination, in 2000, that the unions claimed, the teachers' union and public service union claimed, for a 30% increase could have been managed. No way. But it was appropriate and politically opportunistic for politicians to align themselves with that line of thinking and to publicly declare their support for the demands by talking a set of rubbish about the when you look against the backdrop of the graft and the corruption and the this and that, 30% is not entirely unreasonable. Utter nonsense. But it sounded good to those same politicians regarded as not sufficiently schooled. And so you know the public's emphasis on money and meeting their material needs, and therefore you could make that kind of alliance by saying, yes man, you're right, 30% is the right thing. Perhaps you should have even asked for more. It was appropriate then to talk about the high levels of unemployment officially and unofficially. But now that the shoe is on the other foot, you're afraid to talk about levels of unemployment because you know the truth. So you have to keep pushing people in other directions. So politicians sometimes say the darndest things because they know who they are addressing. They're not addressing necessarily the enlightened, because the enlightened rationally determine how they would vote. They vote on issues, not on emotions. But we continue to keep the majority of the active electorate focused on issues that appeal to them. And we feed them the political trite, making them believe that they are somehow important. When if they were to examine the bigger picture, they realize that they're not in any way important to you at all. That is our political reality. If we were to examine this Caribbean of ours closely, we would realize that even those whom we have come to admire at some point in their careers as leaders of government, they came to see themselves as benevolent dictators. They came to see themselves as benevolent dictators. What kind of leader becomes so consumed with an ascension to power that he boasts publicly of when I swivel in the big chair? When I swivel in the big chair. Utter nonsense. But it gave his minions a certain sense of achievement. I swivel in the big chair. How uncouth. How uncouth. But it is that same situation that has led leaders to treat people the way they have. Because once they catch you going down that road and you find it so entertaining that he could talk about swiveling in the big chair, they then hold you to that line of thinking. That's why Just Another Look asked, was there a relationship between the start of calling people unschooled and untutored, being of the lowest common denominator, etc., and the fact that on the opening or reopening of the Peace Memorial Hall, persons with disabilities mounted a protest of sorts? Was there a link? Look at the juxtaposition of events and tell me whether or not there was a link between the two. You see, we don't like to discuss these things because they are a little bit disturbing. But it's important to ask, was there a juxtaposition of these events? And if there were, what was the intention? What was the intention? How do you look at your own people and refer to them as unschooled, untutored, minority wrongs, dishonest and malignant, possessive of a sort of learned helplessness? Who are you referring to, bro? Who are you referring to? Who have so offended you that this is the only way you can characterize them? Are you referring to members of your own society, many of whom have contributed to its development? Are you referring to people whose contributions are now being overlooked simply because they do not support you politically? Who are you referring to as unschooled and untutored, minority wrong, possessive of a sort of learned helplessness, lowest common denominator? Whom are you referring to? Because it begs the question, how could a political leader of a country deem anyone in that society, regardless of political affiliation, worthy of such despicable terms? What does it say about you? It is not what goes into a man that makes him unclean. It is not what goes into him that makes him unclean. To whom were you referring when you applied these despicable terms and used them on one platform after another? You are the one that at some point says that others are interested in commence, half-truths and innuendos. Nice sounding phrase. But to whom are you applying it? To whom are you applying it? And do you listen to yourself enough? Play back some of your speeches and ask yourselves, why did I find it necessary to so calumniate my own people? politicians are a very special breed of people. Our politicians are forever striving after adulation. That is the reason why in the early days, in 2001, the official car would stop all over the place. And people were anxious to get a little touch. They get a little feel. To be able to say, I touched the Prime Minister, man. That's my boy. That's my boy. Now, people appear to be running anytime the vehicle stops. Many do not want to be associated, because they have now come to an understanding of what constitutes the leadership style that we've been exposed to since 2001. The we has consistently given way to the I. You see, in their search for adulation, our politicians begin by seeking to make themselves popular with the masses. They are anxious to be considered very popular, knowing that by and large the active electorate is still at a stage where charisma and popularity are inseparable. So they strive to be popular. And once they have that popularity, they then transition into benevolent dictators. That is one of the reasons that Just Another Look has always asked, did the Unity Labour Party in 2000 and 2001 and lead up to the election, did they access financial assistance from the boys in the hills? Did they access assistance from people who were involved in drugs, in the drug trade? And if they did, what were the promises in return? Because some people are well aware that after the Unity Labour Party came to power, that many a drug baron had to run for cover. Many a drug baron in this country had to run for cover. And now that we are talking medical marijuana, those who ran the risk of being involved in the drug trade illegally then, and who may now wish to be beneficiaries of the production of marijuana for medicinal purposes, are most likely to find themselves marginalized and being forced to give way to international investors. Just Another Look has already declared that the average marijuana farmer in this country will still find himself subjected to the laws of this country in a way that renders it extremely difficult for them to become beneficiaries, even when we transition to medical marijuana. Mark our words on that. the approach being used to medical marijuana is that it's not for you small guys. You small farmers can't make this thing. Economies of scale is what is necessary, and we want big plantations. Watch and see who will be the beneficiaries. You see, they already bring a man who's a chef. A man who's a chef has already come here. Has really been here. And when it was exposed that is a chef that was here, people started to distance themselves. I wasn't aware of who he was. I wasn't aware of this. I wasn't aware of that. So here's how we're approaching things. We're allowing companies to come in to test our marijuana quality, when our marijuana quality has been touted all over the world. But we allowed a chef to come and tell us about the quality of our marijuana. It is the beginning of the process of the disenfranchising of those who have long been involved in the marijuana production business. And now that there's an opportunity to benefit, they will make sure you remain on the fringes. While the bigger boys will come and take control. History will repeat itself. You saw it in the production of sugarcane, in the production of bananas, in the production of cocoa, and now you will see it in the production of marijuana for medicinal purposes. That's why we tell you to apply your critical thinking skills to what is happening around you. Make your own analyses and understand the games of the politicians, because their games facilitate their gains. They render themselves as political, as benevolent dictators for an unsuspecting public, because they believe that by having you consider them the popular leader, that they can get away with almost anything. You see, it is ever so unfortunate that politicians believe it is all about making promises. The better sounding the promise, the more likely the electorate is deemed prone to supporting the political leader and the party. In our St. Vincent and the Grenadines, like the rest of the Caribbean, advances in education, increases in the number of professionals in our midst, have not translated into rational legal leadership. It is still the popular leader that is important. It's the reason that at times politicians do everything to belittle the other. We have asked time and again, what was the purpose of the reference of George Bush coming in the middle of the night and who he would recognize? If not a reference to people's color. Why would we be talking about the middle of the night? If not because one leader of a political party was black and the other white. Is there something about race there? What was the purpose of referencing a choice between Christ and Barabbas? You were not speaking Christianity, dear friend. You were seeking votes. What was the reference for? Was there a hint of race in all of that? How is it possible that in an age of enlightenment, we could be talking about people's looks in the political arena? Is there something insulting about that? In an age of enlightenment, we expect to be addressing issues. Issues. Is how you look an issue? Is whether George Bush would recognize you in the middle of the night an issue? But here we made it an issue. It was stated because it was politically opportunistic. And that's why we've said Gonzalez has brought no new politics to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He has merely rehashed same old, same old, same old. But as Kasim Baka says, the psychological dependency syndrome instilled in us in slavery and colonialism is still very much within us. And we see it all around the Caribbean. All around the Caribbean. Indeed, you know, friends, the color question and charisma still combine to make a deadly political cocktail that leaves the Vincentian electorate swooning on every word that comes from the leader, from Papa. However incredulous those words may be. That is our reality. Small wonder then that at times a political leader can assure the populace that he could put a stone to contest a seat, a constituency seat, and be assured of victory because it is the leader that the people are voting. It is all about the leader, his charisma, and his skin color. That is our political reality. In this week's program, we spend some time examining the political culture that has become fashionable in St. Vincent and the Grenadines over the past several years. The listener, you, dear friend, are being challenged. You are being challenged to determine whether or not we have advanced or regressed or merely standing still. You know, one of the most disturbing features of a politician is his actual self-delusion. Believing that he was somehow born to lead the country. That he was somehow born to lead the country. In some advanced countries, we would consider this a mere flight of fancy, but not in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, every effort is being made, especially now in the twilight years of his career. Especially now in the twilight years of his career, to convince the nation that he was destined to be the political leader. In the twilight years of his career, Papa is attempting to convince himself, because clearly he has not convinced enough others, that he was destined to lead this country. It is expected that from time to time, dear friends, a politician would come along who would have over time convinced himself that he was born to rule. And that is what drives him. But academics have long wrestled with the issue of whether leaders are born or made. Unfortunately, some leaders have gone ahead and have convinced themselves and their own minions that they were born to lead. So much so that they spend the rest of their lives trying to convince others of their self-delusion.